I am Cassandra Miller, 27 years old, and I never thought I would be the one to bring my family to their knees. The dinner started like any other Sunday gathering, except everything felt wrong. My mother smiled too widely, my father cracked jokes he would normally find tasteless, and my sister Amanda called me the best sister in the world 3 times in an hour. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I catalogued each unnatural interaction. When the dessert arrived, something in me snapped. I laughed a hollow sound that silenced the table and said, "I am done with all of you." They shouted in unison, "For what?" With ice in my veins, I replied, "I know what you are plotting against me." Their faces turned pale as sheets. Before I continue this story, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and if you have ever caught someone in a scheme against you, hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I uncovered my family's dark plan. Growing up in suburban Boston, I was always the practical one. I graduated with honors in finance from Northeastern University and landed a job as a forensic accountant at one of the top firms in the city. My career trajectory had been nothing short of impressive, allowing me to purchase a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in Back Bay by 25, something my parents had taken years to achieve at my age. Our family had always presented itself as close-knit, the kind that neighbors envied during backyard barbecues and holiday gatherings. But beneath that veneer lay a complex web of competition, resentment, and control that had shaped our relationships since childhood. My mother, Eleanor Miller, was the unofficial CEO of our family. A former corporate executive who gave up her career to raise children, she channeled her organizational skills and perfectionism into micromanaging our lives. Nothing ever seemed good enough for her unless it was done her way. She had mastered the art of the backhanded compliment and could deliver criticism wrapped in such sweet concern that you would find yourself thanking her for it. "Cassandra, honey, that blouse is so brave of you. Not many people would wear that color with your complexion," she would say, or, "Your apartment is certainly cozy. Some people prefer small spaces, they are easier to clean." My father, Richard Miller, was her perfect counterpart. A corporate attorney who specialized in conflict resolution, he brought his professional skills home by becoming the family peacemaker. He avoided confrontation at all costs, smoothing over tensions with jokes and changing subjects when conversations grew heated. While this kept the peace on the surface, it enabled my mother's controlling behavior and taught us to suppress our true feelings. "Your mother means well," he would whisper after particularly cutting remarks. "Just let it go, Cass. You know how she gets when she is challenged." Then there was my sister Amanda, 2 years younger than me, but always positioned as the crown jewel of the family. Where I was analytical and reserved, Amanda was charismatic and social. She majored in communications, worked in public relations, and had a knack for taking credit for my achievements while minimizing her own shortcomings. "Did you know Cassandra got that scholarship because I introduced her to my professor friend?" She once told relatives at Thanksgiving, completely fabricating the connection that had nothing to do with my academic scholarship. The family dynamic had grown increasingly strained over the past year as my career took off. I received a substantial promotion, making me one of the youngest senior forensic accountants at my firm. The partners had even mentioned potential for partnership track in a few years, something almost unheard of for someone my age. My growing financial independence and professional success created a subtle power shift that my mother in particular seemed to resent. My parents had always expected to be the ones to help me, not the other way around. When I offered to help them refinance their mortgage to a better rate using my banking connections, my mother refused outright. "We have managed our finances for decades without your help, Cassandra," she had said, a tight smile on her face. "Perhaps focus on your own future. You know how quickly things can change in this economy." The gaslighting and emotional manipulation had been present throughout my childhood, but I had only recently begun to recognize the patterns. Comments about my appearance, subtle digs at my social life, or lack thereof, constant comparisons to Amanda or cousins who had settled down properly with husbands and children instead of focusing on careers. The recent strange behavior had started about 3 months ago. I would call home and hear hushed voices in the background that would suddenly stop. Text conversations would abruptly end when I asked about certain topics. Twice, I had walked into rooms at my parents' house to find them hunched over papers that were quickly shuffled away. My sister had become unusually interested in my work schedule, asking repeatedly when I would be traveling for audits or working late. She had never shown interest in my career before, typically glazing over whenever I mentioned anything finance related. "Do you have to go into the office this weekend?" she would ask. Or, "How flexible is your vacation time? Can you just take days off whenever you want?" Then came the invitation to a special family dinner last Sunday. My mother had called insisting that everyone needed to be there, that they had something important to discuss. Her voice had that forced cheerfulness that always spelled trouble. "We just want to spend time together, darling. It has been too long since we have all sat down for a proper meal." As a forensic accountant, I am trained to spot inconsistencies, to follow paper trails, to notice when numbers or people do not add up. Something about this dinner invitation felt off from the start, like pieces of a puzzle that appeared to fit but left gaps when pressed together. I had arrived at the dinner with my guard up, my professional suspicion engaged. Little did I know my instincts were about to be proven right in ways even I could not have anticipated. The evening of the special family dinner arrived on a crisp autumn Sunday. I pulled into the driveway of my parents' colonial-style house in Lexington, the same home I had grown up in, and immediately noticed unusual details. Both my parents' cars were parked in the driveway, rather than the garage, as if making room for something or someone else. The porch lights were all on, not just the main one, creating an overly welcoming glow that seemed forced rather than inviting. I straightened my blazer, a habit from work when entering tense negotiations, and approached the front door. Before I could even knock, it swung open to reveal my mother dressed in a formal navy dress I had only seen her wear at charity galas. "Cassandra, darling, right on time." As always, she gushed, pulling me into a perfume-heavy embrace that lasted several seconds too long. "Everyone is already here waiting for you." The house smelled of pot roast and freshly baked rolls, my favorite meal from childhood. I noted this calculated touch as I followed her through the foyer into the formal dining room, a space typically reserved for Thanksgiving and Christmas, not casual Sunday dinners. The table was set with the Wedgwood china that had belonged to my grandmother, the pieces usually kept locked in a display cabinet and brought out only for the most special occasions. Crystal wine glasses gleamed under the chandelier, which had been dimmed to create an intimate atmosphere. My father stood when I entered, another unusual formality, wearing a button-down shirt and sports jacket rather than his typical weekend sweater. "There she is, our financial wizard," he announced with exaggerated pride, coming around to pull out my chair. "We were just saying how lucky we are to have such a brilliant daughter, were we not, Amanda?" My sister sat across from my place, wearing a pink dress I had never seen before, her hair freshly highlighted and styled. She looked up with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Absolutely," she agreed, her voice pitched slightly higher than normal. "The best sister anyone could ask for. I was just telling Mom and Dad how much I admire your dedication to your career." Amanda had never admired my career choices. In fact, she had spent years making jokes about how boring my work must be, calling me the family calculator and rolling her eyes whenever I discussed my job. I settled into my seat, hyper-aware of the unusual attention focused entirely on me. "What is the occasion?" I asked, directly deciding to cut through the performance. "Does there need to be an occasion to celebrate family?" my mother replied, bringing in a bottle of expensive Cabernet Sauvignon that I recognized as being well beyond their usual wine budget. Dinner progressed with strange, stilted conversation. My father told jokes he would normally consider inappropriate for family dinners. My mother served portions and then insisted I take seconds before anyone else had finished firsts. Amanda kept asking questions about my apartment, my schedule, and my future plans. "Have you thought about what your next steps might be?" she asked, twirling pasta around her fork without actually eating it. "I mean, career-wise, do you think you will stay at your current firm forever?" "I am happy where I am," I replied carefully. "The partnership track is opening up sooner than expected." "But surely you want more work-life balance." Eventually, my mother interjected quickly. "That apartment of yours, so much space for just one person. Such a waste, really." "It is not a waste if it is what I want," I countered, noticing how my father glanced nervously at my mother. After the main course, Amanda excused herself and returned with a small wrapped package, placing it beside my plate with flourish. "Just a little something to show how much we appreciate you," she said, watching intently as I unwrapped it. Inside was an expensive watch far nicer than anything Amanda could afford on her PR salary. I slipped it on with murmured thanks, growing increasingly uncomfortable with the uncharacteristic generosity. When my mother stepped into the kitchen to prepare dessert, I heard her phone chime with a message. She checked it quickly, angling the screen away when she noticed me watching. My father received a text moments later and exchanged a significant look with her that set alarm bells ringing in my head. "So," my father said, raising his glass in yet another toast, the third of the evening, "to new beginnings and the changes coming our way. Family is everything, and sometimes we need to make difficult decisions for the people we love most." "What changes?" I asked directly. The question seemed to catch him off guard. "Just, life changes. Amanda might be getting a promotion. Your mother is thinking about reopening her consulting business. Life evolves." While helping clear plates before dessert, I overheard a fragment of whispered conversation from the kitchen. "Not yet," my mother was saying. "We need to wait until after we talk to Dr. Harrison tomorrow. He said timing is everything with these situations. But the paperwork needs to be filed by Friday if we want to move forward with the plan," my father replied, his voice barely audible. They fell silent immediately when I entered with the stack of dinner plates. During dessert, a rich chocolate cake that had always been reserved for special celebrations, Amanda kept checking her phone under the table. When I managed to glimpse the screen, I saw she was texting someone named Dr. H about C's situation and next steps after dinner. My mother steered the conversation toward my work hours, asking pointed questions about how I manage stress. "You work such long hours, darling. Does the firm offer any support for mental wellness? These high-pressure jobs can take such a toll." "I am fine," I said firmly. "My mental wellness is excellent. Thank you for your concern." "Well, you never know when these things can creep up on you," she persisted. "Your cousin Beth, you remember she had that breakdown in college. No one saw it coming either." As they served coffee, my father made an odd comment that crystallized all my suspicions into a single horrifying realization. "Your mother and I have been thinking, Cassandra, that apartment of yours represents such a significant financial commitment. If you ever felt like you needed a change, needed to step back from the pressures for a while, you could always come home. Your old room is still there. We could help you manage the sale, or even just rent it out while you regroup." The pieces suddenly locked into place. The unusual attention, the gifts, the questions about my schedule and mental health, the secretive texts, the comments about my apartment, the mention of paperwork and doctors. They thought I was having some kind of breakdown. Or worse, they were planning to convince others I was having one. My apartment, my finances, my independence were all at risk. Something inside me snapped. The careful, analytical professional gave way to raw, wounded anger. I set down my coffee cup with deliberate calm. "This has been lovely," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "But I think I am done with all of you." The silence that followed my declaration was deafening. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me in shock, dessert forks suspended midair as if frozen in time. "What do you mean, done with us?" my father finally asked, his practiced conflict resolution voice sliding into place. For what my mother and sister demanded in near unison, exchanging quick glances that only confirmed my suspicions. I folded my napkin carefully and placed it beside my half-eaten chocolate cake. "I know what you are plotting against me." The color drained from their faces so rapidly it would have been comical in any other situation. My mother recovered first, her socialite training kicking in as she forced a laugh. "Plotting, Cassandra? What on earth are you talking about? We are just having a nice family dinner." "No," I said, my voice gaining strength with each word. "This is not a nice family dinner. This is a setup. The fancy china, the expensive wine, the watch, the excessive compliments, the strange questions about my mental health and finances. You are planning something." I turned to each of them, laying out the evidence methodically as I would when presenting findings in a fraud case. Dad, you never wear a sports jacket on Sundays. Mom, you have checked your phone 12 times and angled it away from me each time. Amanda, you have never once shown interest in my career until tonight when you suddenly want to know my exact schedule. You mentioned Dr. Harrison in the kitchen, and Amanda has been texting someone listed as Dr. Acha about my situation. My father set down his wine glass, his hand trembling slightly. Sweetheart, I think you are reading too much into things. Am I? I challenged. Then why did you suggest I sell my apartment and move back home to regroup? Why the conversation about Cousin Beth's mental breakdown? Why the paperwork that needs to be filed by Friday? My mother's face hardened, her social mask slipping to reveal the steel beneath. If you must know, we are concerned about you. Living alone, working those insane hours, no social life to speak of. It is not healthy, Cassandra. So your solution is to what? Have me declared incompetent, take control of my finances, force me into some kind of treatment, all while helping yourselves to my assets. My voice remained steady, even as my hands began to shake with suppressed fury. How dare you, my mother, hissed genuine anger, breaking through her composed exterior. After everything we have done for you, how dare you accuse us of such things? My sister's approach was different. Tears welled in her eyes, the wounded innocence act she had perfected since childhood. We love you, Cass. We just want what is best for you. You have been so different lately, so paranoid and distant. Gaslighting will not work this time, I said, standing up. I know what I heard, what I saw, and I know what you are planning. My father remained silent, his gaze fixed on the tablecloth. His refusal to make eye contact told me everything I needed to know. This dinner is over, I announced, collecting my purse, and until you are ready to be honest about your intentions, so is our relationship. I walked out despite their protests, my mother's voice rising to that particular pitch that had always commanded obedience in our household. But I was no longer the compliant daughter they could manipulate. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. Had I overreacted? Was I seeing conspiracy where there was only genuine concern? No, the evidence was too clear, too consistent with the patterns of control I had experienced throughout my life. By the time I reached my building, my phone was lighting up with texts and calls. Please come back, you misunderstood, from my father. We need to talk about this like adults from my mother. I am worried about you. This is exactly what we mean from Amanda. I silenced my phone and poured myself a generous glass of bourbon, something I rarely indulged in. My hands were still shaking, adrenaline coursing through my system as the full implications of the evening settled over me. If my family was indeed planning some kind of intervention or legal action regarding my mental competence, I needed to protect myself. As a forensic accountant, I knew exactly how vulnerable assets could be when questions of mental capacity arose. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake replaying conversations from the past few months, searching for clues I might have missed. The strange phone calls that stopped when I entered rooms, the whispered conversations. My mother asking for a spare key to my apartment just in case of emergencies last month. Amanda's sudden interest in my work schedule and vacation time. By morning, my initial certainty had begun to waver under the weight of second-guessing and familial conditioning. Had I truly uncovered a plot, or was I experiencing the very paranoia they were concerned about? A text from my college friend Diane, who had attended law school and now specialized in family law, helped anchor me back in reality. Call me ASAP. Your mom reached out to me last week asking weird questions about power of attorney and temporary guardianship for a friend with an adult daughter in crisis. I did not make the connection until your text last night. This is serious, Cass. With that external confirmation, my doubts evaporated. My family was indeed planning something, and I needed to find out exactly what before they could implement it. As I showered and dressed for work, my phone rang again. This time it was Martin Cooper, a family friend and my parents' longtime neighbor. Cassandra, sorry to call so early. Your mother mentioned you left dinner upset last night. I just wanted to check if you are okay. I am fine, Martin. Just a misunderstanding, I replied cautiously. Well, that is good to hear. Listen, while I have you on the phone, I wanted to ask about the renovation plans. Your father mentioned you might be staying with them for a while, and they are converting the home office into a more comfortable bedroom for you. I have a contractor I could recommend if they have not found one yet. Ice formed in my stomach. Renovation plans. When did he mention this? Last week at our poker game. Said it might be a few months, maybe longer, depending on your situation. Anyway, just wanted to offer my guy's services. He did a great job on our bathroom. After thanking him and ending the call, I sat heavily on the edge of my bed. A few months. Maybe longer. They were not planning a short intervention. They were preparing for a long-term arrangement. The question was no longer whether my family was plotting against me. The question was how far they were willing to go and how quickly I needed to act to protect myself. Once the shock of confirmation wore off, my professional instincts took over. If my family wanted to play games with legal and financial manipulation, they had chosen the wrong opponent. As a forensic accountant who specialized in uncovering hidden assets and financial fraud, I had both the skills and resources to investigate exactly what they were planning. I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, knowing I needed to focus entirely on understanding the scope of the threat. My boss, understanding my perfect attendance record, did not even question my request for 2 personal days. My first step was to examine the family finances. While I did not have direct access to my parents' accounts, I had helped them with tax preparation last year and still had the login information for their accountant's portal. What I found there sent chills down my spine. 3 large withdrawals had been made from their joint savings account over the past month, totaling just over $40,000. The memo line on each simply read, "Special Project." Additionally, there was a check written to someone named Dr. Harrison Winters for $3,500 labeled as consultation. I searched the name online and found a psychiatrist specializing in severe anxiety disorders, delusions, and family interventions for adults with sudden onset mental health crises. His website featured testimonials from grateful families who had reclaimed their loved ones from the brink of self-destruction. Next, I turned to social media. My sister had always been careless with her privacy settings. A quick browse through her saved items revealed multiple bookmarked real estate listings for apartments significantly cheaper than mine, all saved within the last month. She had also joined a private Facebook group called Supporting Loved Ones Through Mental Health Crisis 4 weeks ago. I recalled giving Amanda my laptop password months ago when she needed to check her email during a visit. On a hunch, I checked my browser history for the days she had been in my apartment. Sure enough, she had searched how to sell someone else's property with power of attorney and temporary conservatorship for mental health reasons while using my computer. The scope of their plan was becoming clearer, and it was more comprehensive than I had initially feared. This was not just about convincing me to seek help. This was about taking legal control of my finances and property. I needed more concrete evidence. Using a different email address, I contacted my parents' family lawyer under the pretense of being a new assistant at my father's firm, asking to confirm the appointment scheduled for the following week. The receptionist helpfully informed me that Mr. and Mrs. Miller are scheduled for a consultation regarding conservatorship options on Thursday at 2 p.m. My parents' neighbor Martin had unwittingly provided another piece of the puzzle with his mention of renovation plans. They were preparing for me to stay with them long-term, likely after forcing me to sell or rent out my apartment. The most damning evidence came from my mother's computer. During a carefully orchestrated visit on the pretense of apologizing for my outburst, I managed to access her email while she prepared tea. There, I found draft emails to family members discussing Cassandra's situation and intervention options. One particularly chilling exchange with my aunt read Dr. Winters believes she may be experiencing the early stages of a delusional disorder, possibly triggered by work stress. He suggests we move quickly before it progresses further. The paperwork needs to be filed while she is still showing some awareness that her behavior is concerning. In her browser history, I found searches for an expensive private mental health facility called Lakeside Wellness Center, known for its long-term residential treatment programs. The facility's minimum stay was 90 days at a cost of $20,000 per month, easily covered by the sale of my apartment. I also discovered she had been researching medications for delusional disorders and had joined several parent support groups for adult children with sudden mental health crises. Most disturbing of all, I found a document she had downloaded titled Recognizing Anosognosia: When Mental Illness Prevents Insight into One's Condition. The document outlined how to handle loved ones who did not believe they were ill and provided strategies for forcing treatment despite resistance. Each discovery built upon the last, creating a clear picture of their plan. They believed or had convinced themselves to believe that I was experiencing some kind of mental health crisis. Rather than approaching me directly with their concerns, they had consulted doctors, planned legal action, and prepared to take control of my life and assets. The final confirmation came when I managed to access my sister's cloud storage through a shared family account. There, I found a document titled Intervention Plan for Cassandra, with detailed notes from multiple meetings with Dr. Winters. The document included a script for the intervention roles assigned to various family members and a timeline for legal actions following my anticipated resistance to treatment. The plan called for a formal intervention the following Sunday with Dr. Winters present, along with several relatives and close family friends. They would present me with evidence of my supposedly concerning behavior, including working long hours, living alone, and becoming increasingly suspicious of family members, ironically a suspicion that was now completely justified. If I refused their help, which they anticipated the backup plan involved filing for temporary conservatorship, on grounds of mental incapacity, my mother was to be named temporary conservator, giving her control over my finances and medical decisions. The apartment would be sold or rented with the proceeds used to fund my treatment at Lakeside. As I pieced together their entire scheme, I felt an odd sense of calm replace my initial panic. Knowledge was power, and now I knew exactly what I was facing. The question was no longer what they were planning, but how to counter it effectively. I gathered copies of everything I found, securing the evidence in both physical and digital formats. If my family wanted to declare war on my autonomy, they would soon discover they had severely underestimated their opponent. Their plan relied on portraying me as unstable, delusional, and incapable of managing my own affairs. My counter-strategy would need to establish the opposite so definitively that no judge or medical professional would ever consider their claims credible. As I drove home from my information-gathering mission, I realized the cruel irony of the situation. In attempting to control me under the guise of mental health concerns, my family had created the very crisis they claimed to fear. The difference was, this crisis was not in my mind but in the very real threat they posed to my freedom and autonomy. The betrayal cut deeper than I had allowed myself to acknowledge. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, who should have been my strongest supporters. Instead, they had secretly conspired to strip me of my autonomy under the guise of concern. I permitted myself one evening to feel the full weight of that betrayal, cycling through shock, grief, and white-hot anger. I ordered takeout, poured a glass of wine, and allowed the tears to come as I mourned the family I thought I had. By morning, however, the analytical side of my personality had reasserted control. Emotions would not protect me. Strategy would. I created a comprehensive counterplan, applying the same methodical approach I used for complex financial investigations. My first call was to my own therapist, Dr. Lydia Martinez, whom I had been seeing monthly for general stress management for the past 2 years. I scheduled an emergency session and laid out everything I had discovered. "This is deeply concerning, Cassandra," she said after listening to my detailed account. "For the record, I have never observed any symptoms of delusional thinking or any other serious mental health condition in our sessions. Your responses to stress have always been appropriate and measured. Would you be willing to document that professionally?" I asked. "Absolutely. I will prepare a formal assessment of your mental state based on our 2-year history. While I cannot diagnose someone I have never met, I can also note that your family's behavior shows concerning patterns of control and manipulation that are consistent with your past descriptions of your relationship dynamics. Next, I contacted Jordan Blackwell, a lawyer at my firm who specialized in estate planning and competency issues. I laid out the situation clinically, presenting the evidence I had gathered without emotional commentary. "This is serious," Jordan confirmed, reviewing the documents. "They are building a case for temporary conservatorship, which can be granted without your presence in some circumstances. The good news is their case appears to be built on very shaky grounds." "What do I need to do?" I asked. "First, we secure your financial assets. We will set up a trust with carefully chosen trustees outside your family. Second, we gather evidence of your mental competence from multiple sources, professional colleagues, your therapist friends who can attest to your stability. Third, we document this pattern of manipulation to demonstrate that they are the ones acting inappropriately, not you." Over the next 3 days, I methodically implemented our plan. I transferred most of my liquid assets into a newly established trust, with my close friend Diane and my mentor from graduate school as trustees. I obtained formal letters from my therapist, my primary care physician, and my supervisor at work, all attesting to my mental stability and professional competence. I scheduled a complete neurological and psychological evaluation with an independent specialist recommended by Jordan, resulting in a comprehensive report confirming my cognitive functioning was excellent and showing no signs of any condition that would impair my judgment. My colleague in digital forensics helped me secure recordings of phone conversations with family members in which they made leading statements about my mental state, attempting to provoke reactions they could later use against me. In one particularly telling conversation, my mother said, "Darling, we all go through difficult times. There is no shame in admitting you need help. Remember Cousin Beth, she resisted treatment too, and look how much better she is now." "Mom, I do not need psychiatric help. I am perfectly fine," I responded calmly. "That is exactly what someone in denial would say," she countered, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. "Your resistance only confirms what Dr. Winters suggested might happen." These recordings, while difficult to obtain legally, in some circumstances, were permitted as I had informed all parties at the beginning of the calls that they were being recorded for clarity about our family situation. I documented every interaction with timestamp and context, creating a comprehensive record of their pattern of manipulation. I gathered financial records demonstrating my sound money management performance reviews, showing my professional success, and testimonials from colleagues and friends attesting to my rational behavior and mental clarity. Perhaps most importantly, I built a support network outside my family. I reached out to friends I had neglected due to work commitments, reconnecting and explaining the situation. Their shock and immediate offers of support helped counter the isolation my family had been subtly encouraging. My college roommate Leslie flew in from Chicago after hearing what was happening. "I cannot believe they would do this," she said as we sat in my living room reviewing the evidence. "But knowing your mother, I also completely believe it." "The most effective gaslighting happens in isolation," I explained. "They have been trying to limit my outside perspectives, creating an echo chamber where only their version of reality exists." The hardest part of building my counter strategy was preparing emotionally for the confrontation I knew was coming. Jordan had advised me to let their intervention play out partially before revealing my counter evidence, allowing them to fully reveal their intentions before challenging them. The stronger the evidence of their plan in action, the more difficult it will be for them to deny their intentions later, he explained. I practiced maintaining emotional control during provocative scenarios, working with Dr. Martinez on techniques to stay calm under pressure. I rehearsed key talking points and prepared responses to likely accusations. "When they claim you are paranoid for suspecting them, what will you say?" Dr. Martinez asked during one practice session. "I will calmly present the evidence I have gathered without emotion or accusation," I replied. "I will say, I understand you may believe you are acting out of concern, but here are the facts about my mental and financial state." As Sunday approached, I fine-tuned the final details of my plan. Jordan would be available by phone if legal intervention became necessary. Leslie would be nearby, ready to provide support and serve as a witness to the proceedings. Dr. Martinez provided a sealed professional assessment that I could present if needed. I selected my outfit carefully, a conservative blue suit that I often wore to court appearances, projecting professionalism and stability. I prepared a folder with key documents, including the evidence of their planning and the counter-evidence of my competence. The night before their planned intervention, I received a text from my mother. "Darling, we are having a small family gathering tomorrow at 2. Nothing formal, just a few relatives and friends who care about you deeply. Please come, it would mean so much to all of us." I replied simply, "I will be there at 2. What they did not know was that I would be arriving not as the victim they expected, but as someone fully prepared to counter their scheme. They had spent weeks planning to take control of my life. I had spent days planning to take back control of our relationship. As I prepared for bed that night, I felt a strange sense of calm. Tomorrow would be difficult, potentially marking a permanent change in my family relationships. Yet there was something liberating about finally confronting the manipulation that had shaped our dynamics for decades. Whatever happened, I would no longer be the compliant daughter accepting their version of reality. I would stand in my truth with evidence to support it and demand the respect and autonomy I deserved. Sunday arrived, with the kind of perfect autumn weather that my mother would have called auspicious, a clear blue sky, gentle breeze, and temperatures warm enough for comfort, but cool enough to justify the cashmere sweater I wore beneath my blazer. I arrived at my parents' house at exactly 2 p.m., noting the extra cars parked along the street. I recognized my Aunt Susan's sedan, my father's colleague Robert's SUV, and an unfamiliar luxury car that I guessed belonged to Dr. Winters. They had assembled their intervention team exactly as outlined in the document I had discovered. Taking a deep breath, I retrieved my leather portfolio containing all my evidence and approached the front door. Before I could knock it, swung open to reveal my father, his expression a careful mask of casual welcome that did not quite hide the tension around his eyes. "Cassandra, right on time," he said, ushering me inside. "Everyone is in the living room." The scene that greeted me was exactly as I had anticipated from their planning document. The furniture had been rearranged in a loose circle, creating what they probably thought was a non-threatening atmosphere, but actually resembled nothing so much as a tribunal. My mother sat in her favorite armchair wearing a concerned expression that she had clearly practiced. Amanda perched nervously on the sofa beside Aunt Susan and Uncle Frank. 2 family friends, the Johnsons, sat stiffly by the window. In a chair slightly removed from the others, sat a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, a leather notebook open on his lap. Dr. Harrison Winters. I presumed ready to provide his professional assessment of a patient he had never actually met. "Cassandra, thank you for coming," my mother began, her voice warm but practiced. "We have asked a few people who care about you to join us today because we need to talk about something important." I took the empty seat they had left for me in the center of the arrangement, directly across from Dr. Winters. I placed my portfolio on my lap but did not open it yet. "Before we begin," I said calmly, "I would like to know exactly why everyone is here." My mother exchanged a glance with Dr. Winters, who gave a small nod of encouragement. This was clearly a deviation from their script, but one they had prepared for. "Darling, we are all here because we love you and are deeply concerned about you," she said, her voice taking on the syrupy quality she used when trying to manage difficult situations. "Over the past few months, we have noticed some concerning changes in your behavior." "What kind of changes?" I asked, maintaining eye contact. My father leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. "You have been working excessive hours, isolating yourself from family and friends. You seem suspicious of normal interactions, as we saw at dinner last week." Aunt Susan nodded vigorously. "We are worried about the stress you are under, dear. It can affect anyone, even someone as strong as you." "And who is this?" I asked, gesturing toward Dr. Winters, though I knew exactly who he was. "This is Dr. Harrison Winters," my mother said. "He is a specialist in stress-related conditions. He has been kind enough to join us today to help facilitate our conversation." Dr. Winters offered a practiced smile. "I am here simply as a resource, Miss Miller. Your family has shared some concerns, and I thought I might be able to offer some perspective. Perspective on a patient you have never met or evaluated, I asked mildly. His smile faltered slightly. I am not here as your doctor, merely as a family consultant. I see, I said. And what exactly is the purpose of this consultation? My mother took a deep breath, clearly reaching the crux of their prepared intervention. Cassandra, we believe you may be experiencing the early stages of a stress-induced delusional disorder. We want you to consider taking some time away from work, perhaps staying here with us while pursuing treatment with Dr. Winters. And my apartment, I asked. My father jumped in relief, evident in his voice as they reached familiar territory from their script. We think it might be best to rent it out temporarily. The income could help cover treatment costs, and you would not need to worry about maintaining it while you focus on getting better. I see, I said again, letting silence fill the room for a moment. And if I decline this suggestion? The tension in the room ratcheted up noticeably. This was the contingency they had planned for but hoped to avoid. We hope it will not come to more formal measures, my mother said carefully, but we are prepared to do whatever is necessary to ensure you get the help you need, including seeking temporary conservatorship on grounds of mental incapacity. I finished for her. The shocked silence that followed confirmed they had not expected me to know this detail. Dr. Winters closed his notebook, suddenly more alert. How did you... Amanda began before catching herself. Let me make sure I understand the situation correctly, I said, opening my portfolio at last. You believe I am experiencing delusions based on no professional diagnosis, primarily because I accused you of plotting against me. You have consulted with Dr. Winters, who has never met me about my supposed condition. You have researched private mental health facilities, specifically Lakeside Wellness Center, with its 90-day minimum stay. You have withdrawn $40,000 from your savings account for this special project. You have scheduled an appointment with your family lawyer to discuss conservatorship options. And you have begun renovating the home office for my extended stay here while planning to sell or rent my apartment to pay for my treatment. The color drained from my mother's face. My father stared at his hands. Amanda looked as though she might be sick. These are exactly the kinds of paranoid delusions we are concerned about, Dr. Winters interjected smoothly, though I noted he appeared less certain than before. Are they delusions, Dr. Winters? I asked, removing a stack of documents from my portfolio. Because I have copies of the intervention plan my sister stored in the cloud. I have recordings of phone conversations where my family discusses having me declared incompetent. I have screenshots of browser histories showing searches for how to sell property with power of attorney. I have an email from my mother to Aunt Susan discussing filing paperwork while I am still showing some awareness. I placed each piece of evidence on the coffee table as I mentioned it. The room had gone completely silent. I also have these, I continued, revealing another set of documents. A complete neuropsychological evaluation performed 3 days ago by Dr. Elizabeth Chen, confirming I have no cognitive impairments or signs of any mental health condition that would affect my judgment. A letter from my therapist, Dr. Lydia Martinez, whom I have been seeing monthly for 2 years, attesting to my mental stability. Letters from my supervisor and colleagues confirming my exemplary professional performance. And finally, a financial audit of my accounts demonstrating consistent, responsible money management. I turned to Dr. Winters directly. You should know, doctor, that providing a professional opinion on someone you have never examined violates ethical guidelines for psychiatrists. I have already filed a complaint with the medical board regarding your involvement in this situation. He paled visibly, gathering his notes with shaking hands. Cassandra, my mother began, tears forming in her eyes. We only wanted to help you. Did you? I asked quietly. Or did you want to regain control over me? Was this really about my well-being or about your discomfort with my independence? My father finally looked up, shame evident in his expression. We convinced ourselves we were helping you, he admitted, his voice barely audible. But looking at all this, I cannot deny we went about it completely wrong. Amanda burst into tears. I was jealous, she confessed suddenly. You have this amazing career, this beautiful apartment. Mom and Dad are always talking about how successful you are, I thought. I thought if you had problems, maybe they would notice me more. The admission hung in the air, painful in its honesty. The family friends, the Johnsons, stood up awkwardly. We think this is a private family matter, Mrs. Johnson said. We were told this was about helping Cassandra with work stress. We had no idea about any legal actions or forced treatment. I believe my services are no longer required, Doctor, Winters said stiffly, gathering his belongings. Mrs. Miller, I suggest you contact my office to discuss the implications of this situation. As they departed, leaving only family in the living room, I felt a strange sense of calm descend. The confrontation I had feared for days was unfolding better than I could have hoped. Their plan had collapsed under the weight of evidence and external perspective. I want to be very clear, I said to my remaining family members. What you planned to do was not just hurtful, it was potentially illegal. You conspired to have me declared incompetent, without any medical basis, with the intent to control my assets. We never meant to hurt you, my mother whispered, all pretense gone. Intentions do not erase impact, I replied. For years you have manipulated and controlled me, dismissing my feelings and autonomy. This was simply the most extreme version of a pattern that has existed my entire life. What happens now? My father asked, looking genuinely lost. I gathered my evidence back into my portfolio. That depends on you. I am willing to consider rebuilding our relationship, but only with significant changes. I will not be gaslit, manipulated, or controlled. I will not tolerate having my boundaries violated or my autonomy questioned. And if we cannot accept those terms, my mother asked, a hint of her usual steel returning. Then you will have chosen control over connection, I said simply, and I will proceed with my life without you in it. The ultimatum hung in the air, reshaping the family dynamic that had existed for 27 years. For the first time, I was not the one being told what to do. I was the one setting the terms. As I stood to leave, Amanda reached for my hand. I am so sorry, Cass. Truly. I do not expect forgiveness, but I hope someday you might consider it. Her sincerity surprised me. Perhaps this painful revelation had created an opportunity for authenticity that had been missing from our relationship for years. I hope so too, I replied honestly. I walked out of my parents' house, not in anger or defeat, but with the calm certainty that comes from standing firmly in your truth. Whatever happened next, the old patterns had been broken irreversibly. The future of our relationship remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: I would never again allow anyone to make me doubt my own reality. The weeks following the confrontation were eerily quiet. I returned to work, threw myself into a complex new case, and waited. Part of me expected legal retaliation despite the collapse of their initial plan. Another part expected immediate, desperate attempts to repair the relationship on their terms. Instead, there was silence. In that silence, I began my own journey through the complex emotions their betrayal had triggered. Grief came first, deep and surprising in its intensity. I mourned not just the recent betrayal, but the relationship I had always wanted and never truly had. I grieved for the little girl who had sought approval that always came with conditions, for the teenager whose achievements were measured against impossible standards, for the young woman who had learned to doubt her own perceptions. Anger followed, burning hot and cleansing. I allowed myself to feel it fully, no longer tempering my emotions to make others comfortable. During my weekly sessions with Dr. Martinez, I explored the depth of my rage without judgment. Anger is information, she reminded me. It tells us when our boundaries have been violated. Your anger is valid and important. Gradually, the acute emotions gave way to something quieter and more profound. I began to recognize patterns in my own behavior that had been shaped by family dynamics. My perfectionism, my difficulty trusting others, my tendency to overwork, all had roots in the soil of my upbringing. Healing does not mean excusing what happened, Dr. Martinez said during one particularly difficult session. It means understanding its impact on you and consciously choosing different patterns moving forward. 3 weeks after the confrontation, my sister reached out first. A simple text: I know, words cannot fix what happened, but I would like to talk when you are ready. No pressure, no agenda. We met at a neutral coffee shop halfway between our apartments. The conversation was awkward, painful, but surprisingly honest. I have always been jealous of you, Amanda, admitted, cradling her latte. You are so smart, so capable. Everything seems to come easily to you. Nothing comes easily, I replied. I just learned early that showing struggle meant giving Mom ammunition. Her eyes widened with recognition. I never thought of it that way. I always performed my struggles publicly, used them to get attention. Different survival strategies in the same dysfunctional system, I observed. We talked for 3 hours, peeling back layers of competition and resentment to find the genuine connection beneath. For perhaps the first time we spoke as adults, neither of us playing the roles assigned to us in childhood. I am seeing a therapist now, she told me as we prepared to leave. I want to understand why I was willing to hurt you to please Mom. That is not who I want to be. My father reached out next, asking to meet for lunch. He looked older than I remembered, shoulders slightly stooped under the weight of shame. I have always been the peacekeeper, he said after we ordered. I thought that made me the good guy, the reasonable one. I never realized that by avoiding conflict, I was enabling behavior that hurt you. You taught me that my feelings mattered less than keeping the peace, I said quietly. That pattern followed me into other relationships. He flinched, but nodded. I failed you as a father. I cannot change the past, but I am trying to learn a different way forward. Your mother and I have started seeing a marriage counselor. I am learning to set boundaries, instead of just smoothing things over. My mother was the last to reach out nearly 2 months after the confrontation. Her text was formal, almost businesslike. I would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you in person. We met at a restaurant of my choosing, a neutral space where neither of us held home court advantage. She arrived precisely on time, impeccably dressed as always, but there was a new uncertainty in her manner. I have been doing a lot of thinking, she began after the waiter took our orders, and working with a therapist, which is not something I ever thought I would do. What prompted that, I asked. Your father insisted, actually. He said he would not continue in our marriage unless we both got help. A wry smile touched her lips. Apparently he can set boundaries when properly motivated. The admission surprised a laugh out of me. I have not been a good mother to you, she continued, her voice steady despite the cost such an admission must have exacted from her pride. I convinced myself I was preparing you for a harsh world, but the truth is I was controlling you because I could not control my own fears and insecurities. What were you afraid of? I asked, genuinely curious. Irrelevance, she answered simply. I gave up my career for family, and when you began to succeed in ways I never had, I felt replaced, unnecessary. It was easier to focus on what you were doing wrong than to face my own regrets. The honesty was startling, especially from a woman who had spent decades maintaining a perfect facade. The intervention plan was my idea, she admitted. I convinced everyone you needed help, but I was the one who could not handle losing control of the narrative. We talked for hours, excavating decades of misunderstanding and hurt. There were no easy resolutions, no magical moment of perfect reconciliation. Instead, there was something more valuable, the beginning of authentic connection based on truth, rather than control and compliance. Family therapy became a regular part of our lives over the next 6 months. In those sessions, we learned new ways of communicating, new patterns, to replace the dysfunctional ones that had shaped our relationships for decades. The process was messy, often painful, sometimes punctuated by setbacks and old habits reasserting themselves. Family patterns are deeply ingrained. Our therapist reminded us during one particularly difficult session. Changing them requires consistent effort and awareness from everyone. Gradually, our relationships began to transform. My mother learned to express genuine interest without judgment. My father practiced speaking up rather than smoothing over. Amanda and I developed a friendship based on mutual support rather than competition. By Thanksgiving, 6 months after the confrontation, we were ready to attempt a family gathering. The difference from the special dinner that had triggered this journey was striking. Where that meal had been performative and agenda-driven, this one had an authentic quality. that, while sometimes uncomfortable, felt fundamentally honest. My mother still tried to control the presentation of the meal, but when I gently pointed it out, she was able to laugh at herself. "Old habits," she acknowledged. "Thank you for the reminder." My father spoke up when conversation veered toward awkward territory rather than changing the subject. "I think we should address this directly," he said when my mother made a comment about my work hours. "That sounds like concern verging on control." Amanda and I exchanged glances of surprised approval at his intervention. As we gathered around the table, I realized that while the past could not be undone, the future of our relationship was being rewritten in real time. The painful confrontation had broken open. A family system that had been dysfunctional for generations, creating space for something healthier to emerge. "I would like to propose a toast," I said, raising my glass. "To difficult truths and new beginnings." "To boundaries and respect," my father added. "To authentic connection," Amanda offered. "To a family becoming what it always could have been," my mother finished, her eyes bright with unshed tears. We clinked glasses, the sound ringing clear in the moment of genuine connection. The journey of healing was far from complete. There would be missteps and old patterns resurfacing. Trust once broken could only be rebuilt slowly through consistent action rather than words. But for perhaps the first time, we were relating to each other as authentic individuals rather than playing assigned roles in a family drama. The greatest lesson I took from this painful chapter was not about family specifically, but about the courage to stand in your truth, even when others try to rewrite your reality. Recognizing manipulation, whether from family or anyone else, requires trusting your own perceptions even when others attempt to undermine them. Building a life of autonomy means establishing clear boundaries and having the courage to enforce them even with those you love most. True connection can only exist between people who respect each other's right to self-determination. Have you ever had to confront someone who was trying to manipulate your reality? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of standing up for yourself and finding authentic connection. And if you know someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics, share this video as a reminder that they are not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, the most important reality to trust is your own.